Give my story a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The silence of the abandoned office building echoed through the empty corridors as the 30-something cleaning lady pushed her cleaning cart across the marble floors that had once gleamed under the lights of a prosperous empire. Her calloused hands held the damp cloth firmly as she methodically wiped each surface, as she had done every night for the past 6 months. The work was lonely, but she preferred it that way. Fewer questions, fewer judgmental looks, fewer people wanting to know why a woman with a psychology degree was here, scrubbing the floors of empty offices. When she reached the top floor, where the executive suites were located, she noticed a light still on. Strange. The building should be completely empty at this hour of the morning. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway until she stopped in front of the half-open door of the old CEO's office. Inside, a man was sitting on the floor, surrounded by open cardboard boxes and documents scattered everywhere. It was him, the millionaire who had once commanded this empire, now reduced to a dejected-looking man, still maintaining the striking features that had made him known in business magazines. His dark hair was disheveled, his stubble contrasting with the expensive suit that looked like it had been worn for days. He was holding a letter with trembling hands, and even from a distance, she could see the red letterhead that indicated eviction. She should have turned around and continued her work. She should have pretended she didn't see anything. But something stronger than reason compelled her to knock lightly on the door. When he looked up, she saw the naked despair in his brown eyes. It wasn't just the pain of financial loss. It was the emptiness of a man who had lost not only his fortune, but his identity. "Sorry to bother you," she said softly, entering the room. "I'm the cleaning lady. I saw the light on and thought—" He watched her for a moment, as if trying to process her presence there. "Don't worry," he replied in a hoarse voice. "I was just leaving anyway. I was just organizing some things." She looked around the devastated room, broken awards, torn photographs, crumpled contracts. It was as if a storm had passed through, carrying away all traces of the success that those walls had once housed. "Is there anything I can help you with?" she asked, surprising herself with the offer. He laughed bitterly. "Unless you have a few millions stashed away at home, I don't think you can do much for me." She approached slowly, observing him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. It was as if she could see through him, beyond the facade of a ruined businessman. Her dark eyes seemed to carry an ancient wisdom disproportionate to her humble condition. "What if I told you I could help you get back everything you lost?" she whispered. He stared at her in disbelief. "Look around you. I lost my company, my fortune, my reputation. My partners betrayed me. The banks are foreclosing on my debts, and even my ex-wife is using this against me in the custody battle for my daughter. There's no going back." She knelt beside him, ignoring the dust that stained her simple uniform. "I have something," she said quietly, almost as if she were confessing a secret. "Something I've always hidden from the world because people don't understand. They don't believe." "What are you talking about?" "I see things," she continued, her hands trembling slightly. "Fragments of the future, through dreams that have haunted me since childhood. They always thought I was crazy. They committed me because of it. They separated me from my daughter, but the visions, they always come true." He studied her for a long moment. Any sane person would laugh at her, dismiss her as just another unbalanced person. But there was something in the intensity of her gaze, in the absolute conviction of her voice, that made him hesitate. She picked up a crumpled piece of paper from the floor and a pen that had fallen from one of the boxes. With steady hands, she wrote a sequence of numbers, 07, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. "These numbers will change both of our destinies in 48 hours, she said, handing him the paper. "Use your last resources. Play the lottery." He looked at the numbers, then at her. "Are you serious?" I've never been more serious in my life, but you need to know that this comes at a price. Every vision I have steals something from me, and for some reason I can't explain, I feel like I need to help you." She stood up, picked up her cleaning cart, and started to walk away. At the door, she stopped and looked at him one last time. 48 hours, she repeated. "And then you'll understand that some coincidences are too big to be just chance." When she disappeared into the hallway, he was alone again, holding the paper with the mysterious numbers. The silence of the abandoned building seemed more oppressive now, as if it carried the weight of an impossible promise. 2 days later, the ruined businessman was standing in front of the television in a run-down bar, holding the crumpled paper with the numbers the mysterious cleaning lady had written. His last $300 had been bet on those absurd digits, against all common sense that still remained in his rational mind. Around him, other men drank and talked loudly, oblivious to the drama unfolding before their eyes. As the numbers began to be drawn, he felt his heart race. 7, 14, 21. Each number that matched her prediction made his hands tremble more intensely. 28, 35, and then the last number, 42. The paper fell from his trembling hands as the reality of what had just happened hit him like an avalanche. The announced prize was $43 million, not only enough to pay off his debts, but enough to rebuild an even greater empire than before. His fortune was not only restored, it was multiplied extraordinarily. But the initial euphoria lasted only a few minutes. When the adrenaline wore off, a deep unease took hold of him. How was it possible? How could a humble cleaning lady have predicted those exact numbers? And why had she disappeared without a trace after giving him what amounted to a financial miracle? During the following weeks, he returned to the building every night, hoping to find her again. He asked the building manager, the security guards, anyone who might have information about her. He only found out that she worked for a third-party cleaning company, but when he tried to locate her through the company, they said she had resigned the day after the drawing, without explanation. The investigation became an obsession. He hired a private investigator, offered rewards, scoured public records. That's when he found out where she lived, a small house on the outskirts of the city, in a neighborhood where the streets were unpaved and the houses were glued together. When he finally found her, she was hanging clothes in the tiny yard of her house. Upon seeing him, she showed no surprise, as if she already knew he would come looking for her. But there was something different about her face. She looked thinner, paler, as if something vital had been drained from her. "I knew you'd come," she said simply, continuing to hang the small clothes on the makeshift clothesline. "Why did you run away? Why didn't you look for me after the drawing?" She looked at him with a tired expression. "Because I knew what you were going to want to do, offer money, rewards, try to turn this into a business, but my gift doesn't work like that." It was then that he saw the girl, a 4-year-old child who looked only 2 due to severe malnutrition. She hid behind her mother, watching the well-dressed stranger with big, curious eyes. His heart ached as he realized the conditions in which they lived. "Let me help you," he said. "You gave me millions. I can give you a better life." "I don't want your money," she replied firmly. "What I did had a price you can't pay." "What price?" She hesitated, looking at her daughter who was playing with a tattered rag doll. "Each vision I have steals years of my life. And that prediction, it was different from the others, more intense, clearer. It cost me more than it should have." He approached slowly, as if she were a wounded animal that could run away at any moment. "Why did you do this for me? You don't even know me." "Because I saw something in your eyes that night, a pain I recognized, the same one I feel when I look in the mirror." During the following months, he appeared regularly at her house, always with offers: a better job, a bigger house, medical treatment for her daughter, always refused. She accepted only small things: medicine for the girl when she was sick, food when the situation became desperate, but never direct money. It was during one of these visits that she showed him the notebook. Pages and pages of notes about strange dreams, fragmented visions, predictions she had recorded over the years. He leafed through the pages with growing fascination and horror. Accidents avoided, tragedies prevented, small miracles she had provided to strangers who never knew they were saved by a cleaning lady who cleaned their offices at night. "There's something I need to tell you," she said one afternoon when he brought vitamins for her daughter. "I had a vision about your daughter, the girl who lives with your ex-wife." He froze. "What did you see?" "An accident next week. If she goes to school on Thursday, something terrible is going to happen. The school bus, there's something wrong with the brakes." He felt the world spin around him. His daughter, whom he only saw on the weekends allowed by the court, was in danger. And again, the only person who could warn him was that mysterious woman who refused to accept anything in return for her predictions. "How can I be sure this is real?" She looked at him with an expression that mixed sadness and understanding. "You can't. But are you going to risk your daughter's life because of your disbelief?" That night, he called his ex-wife, trying to convince her to keep the girl home on Thursday. The conversation ended in a bitter argument, with her accusing him of making up excuses to interfere with the child's routine. But something in the desperation of his voice must have touched some maternal part of her, because the next morning she called back, saying that her daughter had woken up with a fever and would stay home. On the afternoon of that Thursday, the local news reported the accident. The school bus from his daughter's school had lost its brakes going down a hill. 3 children hospitalized, 2 in serious condition. His daughter would have been on that bus if it weren't for the mysterious intervention of the cleaning lady. When he returned to her house to thank her, he found her passed out in the yard, with her daughter crying beside her. At the hospital, the doctors said it was extreme exhaustion, but he knew the truth. Each prediction was literally consuming her life, and he didn't know if he would be able to continue accepting her help, knowing the price she paid. 3 weeks after the incident at the hospital, the businessman was sitting beside her bed, watching her sleep. The little daughter played quietly in the corner of the room, accustomed to the constant visits of the man who brought stability to their chaotic lives. He had insisted on paying for the medical treatment, and this time she was too weak to refuse. When she woke up, her eyes still carried the deep fatigue that seemed to have settled permanently in her expression. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, trying to sit up in bed. "I need to understand," he said, pulling a chair closer. "I need to know who you really are, how this started." She sighed, looking out the window of the modest room he had rented for them after finding out they were being evicted from their previous house. "You're not going to believe it. After everything I've seen, I think I can believe anything." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength to relive painful memories. "My real name doesn't matter anymore. I have a psychology degree from State University. I had a normal childhood until I was 10, when the visions started. Small things at first. I dreamed that my grandmother was going to fall down the stairs, and the next day she broke her leg. I saw traffic accidents before they happened." He leaned forward, absorbing every word. "Did your family believe you?" A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "At first, yes. They thought it was interesting, even funny. But when the visions became more intense, when I started having horrible nightmares about tragedies that were actually happening, they got scared. My parents took me to doctors, psychiatrists, religious leaders. They all said the same thing: I was sick." Her daughter approached, climbing onto the bed and cuddling next to her mother. The simple, natural gesture made his heart ache. "What happened next?" "I managed to control the visions during my teens. I studied, graduated, started working at a psychology clinic. I met a man, got married, got pregnant. I thought I had left all of that behind." She stroked her daughter's hair, who had fallen asleep again. "But after she was born, the visions came back in full force. They were different, more vivid, more disturbing. I started seeing tragedies involving children, terrible accidents. I tried to warn people, but nobody believed me. My husband said I was having severe postpartum depression. The businessman felt a growing anger building in his chest. He abandoned you? Worse, he and my family ganged up against me. When our daughter was only 6 months old, they got a court order to have me involuntarily committed. They said I was a danger to the child, that I was having psychotic episodes. Her hands trembled as she continued. I spent 2 years committed. 2 years being medicated with drugs that left me like a ghost. They falsified medical records, invented symptoms. When I finally got out, I found out that my husband had gotten full custody of my daughter and disappeared with her. My God, he whispered, indignation taking over his voice. How did you get her back? I didn't. This girl, she pointed to the sleeping child, is not my biological daughter. I found her abandoned in an orphanage 3 years after I left the hospital. She was the same age my daughter would have been at the time. Something in her eyes reminded me so much of her. I adopted her illegally, without proper documents. That's why we live hidden. The revelation hit him like a punch. Your real daughter. I never saw her again. My ex-husband changed his name, disappeared completely. I use the money I earn as a cleaning lady to pay private investigators, but so far nothing. She must be 8 years old now. He got up abruptly, starting to pace the room. I can help. I have resources, contacts. We can find her. No, she said firmly. If they find out where I am, they'll try to commit me again, and this time they'll take her too. She pointed to the sleeping girl. During the following days, he couldn't stop thinking about the injustice she had suffered. He used his restored resources to discreetly investigate her case, uncovering a network of corruption involving the psychiatric hospital, doctors who falsified diagnoses for wealthy families who wanted to get rid of inconvenient relatives, and a judicial system that turned a blind eye to irregularities when there was money involved. It was during this investigation that he received an unexpected call from his ex-wife. She had found out about his closeness to the cleaning lady and was using it as ammunition in the custody battle for their daughter. "You're living with a mentally unstable woman," she shouted on the phone. "I'm going to use this in court. Our daughter can't be exposed to this kind of influence." The irony of the situation was not lost on him. His ex-wife was using exactly the same tactic that had destroyed the life of the woman he was learning to love. Because that's what was happening, he realized with crystal clarity. He was falling for her strength, for the way she had survived unimaginable traumas and still found compassion to help strangers. That night, when he returned to the apartment where she and the girl were living, he found them on the couch, her teaching the child to read. The simple domestic scene made him realize how much his life had changed since that night in the abandoned building. "I had another vision," she said, without looking up from the book, "about your company. There's something you need to know about the betrayal of your former partners." He sat down next to her, preparing himself for yet another revelation that would change his understanding of the past. "What did you see?" "It wasn't just greed. There was a rival company financing the betrayal. They wanted to acquire your contracts, your technology. The money your partners received was just a fraction of what they really profited from selling the information. The anger he felt was different from the one he had experienced when he discovered the initial betrayal. This was cold, calculated, fueled by the knowledge that his ruin had been orchestrated in a much more elaborate way than he had imagined. "There's more," she continued, finally looking at him. "I saw fragments of a meeting. Your ex-wife. She knew about the betrayal before it happened. That's why she filed for divorce when she did, to protect her assets before the bankruptcy." The world seemed to collapse around him once again, but this time he wasn't alone in the middle of the rubble. The next 3 months were an emotional roller coaster that tested all the limits of both of their endurance. The businessman used his restored fortune to hire the best lawyers, determined to expose both the corporate betrayal and the corruption that had destroyed her life. But every legal move was fiercely fought by his ex-wife and former partners, who had their own resources and influence. The court battle intensified when her family found out that she was in contact with a millionaire. Suddenly, the same relatives who had abandoned her in the psychiatric hospital appeared at her door, feigning remorse and offering reconciliation. But she saw through the hypocritical masks. They just wanted a slice of the fortune they imagined was within her reach. "You considered me crazy when I needed you most," she said coldly to the brother she hadn't seen in 5 years. "Now you want to be a part of my life because you think I can give you money." During this turbulent period, her visions became more frequent and disturbing. She saw confusing fragments of courtrooms, documents being signed, a child crying in a dark place. The images were so intense that she would faint, leaving him desperate and the adopted girl scared. It was during one of these crises that she made a discovery that would change everything. While organizing her notebooks to show the lawyers as evidence of her lucidity, she noticed a pattern that she had never noticed before. The visions were not completely random. There was a logic, a sequence of subconscious observations that her mind processed in an extraordinary way. The sequence of lottery numbers, for example. She vaguely remembered cleaning the office of a mathematician a few weeks before meeting him. The man was working on probability algorithms, and there were papers scattered with complex calculations about patterns in drawings. Her subconscious had captured and processed that information in a way that even she didn't understand at the time. The predictions about accidents followed the same pattern. Years of silently observing as a cleaning lady had given her access to phone conversations about vehicle maintenance, forgotten documents about mechanical problems, small details that her psychology-trained mind processed and connected unconsciously. "I'm not a psychic," she said to him one afternoon, when she finally understood the truth. "I'm just a woman who has developed an extraordinary ability to observe and process patterns that others ignore." He looked at her with an expression that mixed relief and even greater admiration. "That makes you even more impressive. You're brilliant. You always were." The discovery brought relief, but also new challenges. If she could prove that her premonitions were based on observation and analysis, she could use that to dismantle the arguments of mental instability. But it also meant admitting years of self-deception about her own gifts. The turning point came when her adopted daughter became seriously ill. The child needed expensive and urgent surgery, and she could no longer refuse his financial help. It was in the hospital, while they waited for news of the operation, that she finally lowered all her barriers. "I'm afraid," she confessed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Afraid to trust, afraid to fall in love, afraid to lose everything again." "You won't lose," he said, kissing her forehead. "I won't let you." It was in that moment of vulnerability that the news arrived that would change everything. The private investigator he had hired discreetly had found her biological daughter. The girl was living in another city with her father, who had changed his identity and remarried. Even more shocking, the man was trying to commit his own daughter, claiming that she was having the same episodes as her mother. "She inherited your observational ability," the investigator explained. "The school reported that she can predict the behavior of her classmates with strange accuracy. The father is using this as evidence of mental illness." The race against time was desperate. Using all the legal and financial resources available, they managed to prevent the commitment and initiate a process to prove inadequate parental responsibility. When she finally reunited with her daughter after 5 years of separation, the emotion was overwhelming. "Mom," whispered the 8-year-old girl, instinctively recognizing the woman who had carried her in her womb. During the final trial, which decided both the custody of the children and the future of his company. She used her analytical skills brilliantly, observing micro-expressions, body language, and patterns of behavior. She helped the lawyers dismantle every lie of their adversaries. His ex-wife was exposed as an accomplice to the corporate betrayal. The former partners were convicted of fraud. The psychiatric hospital had its license suspended after an investigation, and she regained custody of her biological daughter, in addition to obtaining legal adoption of the girl she had raised. 6 months later, they were standing at the altar of a small chapel, surrounded only by the 2 girls who now called both of them family. She wore a simple but elegant dress, a suit that symbolized not corporate power, but the transformed man he had become. "You saved my life that night in the abandoned building," he said during the vows. "And you saved mine when you showed me that I could trust again," she replied. The rebuilt company flourished under new management, with her as a strategic consultant, using her extraordinary analytical skills to make decisions based on keen observation and sharp intuition. Together, they proved that true love can flourish between opposite worlds, and that the greatest wealth is not measured in fortunes or assets, but in the ability to transform pain into hope, loneliness into family, and despair into a future built on solid foundations of trust and mutual respect. The 2 girls grew up knowing that they were loved unconditionally, and she never had to clean empty offices to survive again. She had found her place in the world, not as a mysterious psychic, but as a brilliant woman who knew how to see beyond appearances and transform observation into wisdom. If you liked this wonderful story, please comment, giving a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.